Imperial and paradox reporting for you. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, we alive on arrival. It's so vital, giving tribute to the vision of those this life stifled, to win against the system like Christ's disciples, dying violently.
All right, people, welcome to the Visionary Experience. My name is Brandon Thorpe. I'm owner and founder of Visionary Lending. Today, we're going to have a fantastic conversation. We have Mr. Reggie Holmes, who is the founder of Enthuse Creative. And we have Mr. Anton Keith, who is the founder of Small Circle Social. So welcome, guys. How you doing?
Hey, Brandon.
Thanks. Doing great.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much. So today, our topic is going to be social media tool, weapon, or both. So, there's a lot of buzz that's been going on around that. So I want to start with this. Just a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, actually, I saw a documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma, and it just immediately hooked me. I watched it again with my family, and I watched it again when I went to New Jersey with some other friends, simply because of the topic that it's really covering. To me, in a nutshell, is social media addictive, and what are the implications of that. So I wanted us to have some initial discussion with regards to that. I will definitely admit that I'm not huge on social media in terms of a personal nature, and that's a personal decision of mine. However, we are really growing our business social media presence, and I've had several different business colleagues mention how important that is. So, Reggie, let me go ahead and open this up to you first. What are your thoughts as a business owner, as someone who's actually very prevalent in terms of social media? What are your thoughts? Do you think that social media is a tool? Can it be used as a weapon, or potentially both?
Well, thanks again for having me on, Brandon. I
Absolutely.
do think that social media is a tool. I primarily think of it as a tool to be used to help businesses, to help people become more aware of businesses and brands. Obviously, it's used to push product and to help make sales for businesses. But I really think that it has a lot of good uses, and that it's primarily used
Mhm.
for good, or should be used for good. I do think that on the flip side, it can definitely be used as a weapon, and it really comes back to who is using it, and their intentions and
Mm.
desires for it. But it's definitely very powerful. It's definitely very prevalent. I don't think that that can be questioned at this point, but it really depends on who's using it and for what motive.
Okay, no, I definitely appreciate that, and that's a great perspective to have, where you may have someone who has malintent, as you mentioned, right,
Mhm.
versus the person who is trying to help families to reconnect, right, or
Right.
whatever other good purpose. So, Anton, again, thank you for being on the podcast. What are your thoughts with regards to that same question?
Well, I think that just to echo some of the things that Reggie said, he's absolutely right. There's no question that, it's not being used in a way it was intended. I mean, if you think about social media, it was started off to link kids in college and into like, to organize them and, keep everybody in contact with everything they
Mhm.
have going on. Talking about specifically, Facebook, the largest social media brand. But it has several different uses, as Reggie said. It's the new way we market as business owners. It's the new way we communicate with businesses. I mean, back in the day, you really couldn't get an inside look at what businesses thought or what their mission statement was or anything.
Mhm.
You couldn't really even communicate with a business unless you called them or you showed up at the front door. And now, as a common man or woman, you can pretty much have a conversation with somebody on behalf of a company and get immediate feedback. And that's something that's very positive with social media. But the negative, like he talked about, comes in primarily with our young people.
Hmm.
And that's why I see the vast majority of the problems where our young people are using this tool to somehow seek validation from their peers. And that's where I think that like it's taken a very negative turn, and we need to, the research is still being done right now, but we do have some. But the research is showing us that if we don't get a handle on this, that we're going to have we've already had some dire circumstances, but we're probably going to have more.
Exactly. And let's continue on that point in terms of the immediate gratification. And that's really, if I'm going to have a gripe or a major concern with regards to social media and, adolescents, it's they now are losing a sense of patience, right? Losing a sense of, okay, let me wait, let me work for this. But where there's immediate gratification, whether it's a thumbs up, a thumbs down, a like, a dislike, some type of, immediate response. Now, can we use that? Can we harness that immediate response and use it toward positive, or do you think it's going to potentially erode society in terms of how we communicate with one another because we're not getting immediate feedback? Either one of you can go ahead and address that question.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think that it's definitely sped up the cycle of response and the general public's expectation for how quickly I should get an answer to my question, how quickly I should get my product when I order it, how quickly I should get some sort of, validation, as you guys mentioned, or verification or response from whoever it is, even if it's my friends. If I post something, I want to know that they saw it, that they like it, that the community, even if it's just a digital online community, that they are responding well to it. And everything about the platforms are built that way, you don't just run ads, for example. They have all the dashboards and the analytics there, so you can see in real
Right.
time how people are responding to your content and sort of make changes on the fly. So I think that it's just sped up the process of people putting information and content out, getting and wanting to receive feedback, and so all of that is sort of sped up life, and I think that it will create problems. Not being a parent myself, but just observing young people and working with teens and stuff. I think it does create challenges because there's certain things that you have to learn just from having life experience. And so what it does is give these young people whose brains are still being shaped and still growing, and they're still kind of understanding how the world works and all that stuff. All of this, power and autonomy is being put in their hands through these devices and through this technology. And so, I just think it's more than they can really handle, especially if they're not being taught about, critical thinking and decision making and just all the things that are baked into the platform to like get them to make a certain decision. That they got to learn how to think for themselves, and sometimes that's not really being taught at home. So they're learning how to think and what to think from the platforms, which is definitely dangerous.
No, that's amazing insight. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that. I have a teenage girl and I have a preteen at home, and so we're very concerned in the house in terms of the potential negative effects that it has. Me personally, I'm a little bit more on the critical side. I'll be perfectly honest, because I think that what it's doing is that it's devolving a lot of kids today in terms of their in-person interaction, being able to actually have an in-person conversation, right? And what happens is if you're just texting, if you're just sending emojis, if you're just doing things over social media, you can't really gauge, someone's voice inflection, what they're saying, how they're saying it. You can't really get that deeper social training that I personally believe is extremely important for interpersonal communication. And I think that's potentially a problem. So let me just really, and I have one more thing I want to ask you, Reggie, but we'll get back to that in just a second. So Anton, let me switch over to you because you have two children at home. What are your thoughts with regards to what I just shared and your children in social media?
Well, definitely, you're definitely correct. I mean, it's definitely a challenge because, like what Reggie said, the immediate gratification that the technology is able to provide for them. And I think that one of the things that we're losing in terms of the parenting battle, in terms of if you look at us on one side and maybe technology on the other, is that they are losing the ability to have patience. And I think that like in the when you're sending a message to somebody and you're waiting for a reply and that can be instant, that's amazing. Your body loves that. You get that dopamine hit. And like they do these studies and they show that a little bit of dopamine is released every time you receive a text back or a like or a subscribe or something like that. And it's the same thing as some forms of drugs. Your body, you become dependent upon that dopamine just like you would, in terms of drugs. But
Right.
one thing that technology it doesn't prepare them for is that in reality, things take a little bit longer time. Actually, they take a long time. Your careers, things like that, they take a long time. Things that when you're learning how to critical think, how to write, how to communicate, those things take a long time to develop inside of your brain to function in society properly. And until you can, until they understand that, and that's the challenge of parents trying to tell them like, okay, well, everything else happens really quickly except these
Mhm.
these couple major things. And for them, they don't quite understand and grasp like why is this so slow? Why don't I understand this right now? I can send a message and talk to somebody across the world in a matter of seconds, but why can't I understand these math problems? Why can't when I'm 18 try to apply for a job and they hold me to a certain standard? Why isn't it working? Why doesn't it relate to me? And I think that like there's the challenge. It doesn't teach a lot of the things that makes our system, makes our society run properly, which is patience, hard working, and dedication and commitment. And there is, the solution or the challenges for business owners and parents. We have to pick up the slack and teach our kids.
No, totally agreed. Totally agreed. So let's, along that same vein, in terms of just the communication, but switching gears slightly, can each of you share how you've been using your own company and social media to advance your branding? So, Reggie, if you could start really with sharing what Enthuse Creative is all about, what type of branding it is, and specifically, how are you currently using social media to help advance your brand?
Sure. Thanks. So, Enthuse Creative is my company. We've been around about 7 years. We do brand strategy and design for other businesses. So basically, a business owner will come to me and say, "Hey, I'm starting a business. I need some help with figuring out my brand." And so we kind of walk them through a process where I'll to help them develop their mission, their vision, their values, some of those core things that the DNA, if you will, of their company. And then from there, my background is in graphic design, so I'll help them to create all the visual collateral that will be the face of that brand. So their logo, their brochures, their websites, all those types of things. So the work is very, very visual, very creative, but also strategic, where I'm in there with the business owner, really asking some hard questions and trying to get some clear answers so we can then, take that to their customers and say, this is who this business is, this is what they're all about. So, so with that, I've used social media to do two things really. One is to provide some education for the public about the work that I do. I know that, let's say 6 to 12 months ago, I wanted to position my business as more than just a design studio. So we don't just create nice things to look at, but there's really a lot of meaning and thought and strategy that goes into that. And so I've used social media to try to communicate that value to people who would be my prospective customers, so they can understand that to work with me is to not just work with a graphic designer. There are a lot of folks who are designers, but we really try to bring a strategy and design together. And so, it just requires some education. So I've used social media just to really kind of let people know the way I work and my approach to branding. There's a lot of people that do different aspects of branding that are out there. And the other thing is thought leadership. So publishing articles, publishing, original content to sort of let people know that, hey, I know what I'm talking about. I'm somewhat of an expert in this space, or I've at least spent enough time that you should take what I have to say seriously. So I feel like everybody in today's world is a content producer, whether you signed up to be that or not. Everybody is publishing and pushing out their own content, and you have to stay relevant, because we live in a world where I think people are exposed to somewhere between 4 to 10,000, marketing messages on a daily basis. The average person, that's a stat that I ran across, and so every day, we're just getting hit over the head with marketing from different companies, different brands. Sometimes it's in your face and you see it happening, and other times you don't. It's in the background, but our brains are still picking up on all that. So, that's the way that I've used social media, really just trying to let people know that, this is the way I work, and that I know what I'm talking about. And, I'm credible when I come to talk about things related to branding.
No, absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing that. So you mentioned about content and a lot of people pushing out content, and that's, definitely one of the buzzwords. My personal opinion on it reminds me of a quote. There was a saying that Chris Rock said several years ago. He talked about movies. He said, in his opinion, about 95% of all movies out are terrible, just trash, garbage, in terms of the quality. And when I'm scrolling up and down Netflix, I'm like, man, I think Chris Rock is right. There's only like 5% of these movies that are probably actually good. And so my opinion is, with a lot of the air quotes content that's out there, there's not a lot of value that's really coming out of that, in my opinion. I think that's why I focus on the business channels, the entrepreneurship, the learning. And, again, maybe it's me judging, and, fairly so, definitely. But if someone's putting out just some video of them walking their dog, or,
Sure.
hey, look at me wash my dog with this shampoo. Like, I don't get it. And I don't see where that adds value anywhere. But what would you say, Reggie? Do you think that people, hey, they have the right, obviously, right? It is free speech.
Sure.
It's covered in our Constitution to be able to put that out there. Do you
Sure.
think having too much content out there could be potentially not beneficial?
So I do. I think that there is a trap, that sort of says that you have to just populate these channels with anything. And I do think that is the wrong approach. I think the key thing that I've found is that the better you understand who your customer is, who your audience really is, the more you can make carefully curated content that is for them. The problem, I think, is that people try to do stuff for everybody, and like the whole world, even though the whole world can access your content, the whole world is not your audience. And so, if your customers want to see you walking your dog, well, do that. As far as a business, personally, you can do whatever you like, right? But as far as a business, to really have social media bring value, you have to give your customers and your audience information, entertainment. If it's entertainment, it's just got to be valuable for them. So I think that's the key thing that businesses should keep in mind about social media and creating content.
No, and that's a good point, and we'll switch to Anton in just a second. But you talk about, why are you putting out whatever you're doing, right? Is it for entertainment
Hmm.
value? Is it for business value or whatever? So that's definitely an excellent point. And so, kind of to continue on that, Anton, what are your thoughts in terms of the volume of content that you've seen, because you are heavily into social media for business purposes and just also for personal purposes in terms of you just being aware of what's going on. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, you guys are really taking my thunder. I mean, so just to, answer your first question, once, in terms of a bit, how I use my business, really once a company, let's just say, works with Reggie, and they develop their identity, they develop their branding, they get their website together, all that good stuff. Now my company would come in and say, okay, now that you've developed a message, let's work on the best ways to communicate that so that it's not perceived as fluff and just content, just to be putting content out there.
Hmm.
So however that works for you, whether that's a video podcast such as this one, or an audio version, or whether it's streaming 3 or 4 times a week, but not just filling in product and not just posting just for the sake of posting, because there is a tremendous amount of content out there. But the best, like Reggie said, know who their audience is. And just like just like the conversations that you and I have, it's not about just posting every day about what you're talking about like, what's on the grill today, unless you can somehow mold that to talk about, the things that you're an expert in. Because there's nothing wrong with being, to providing value in the area where you're an expert in. That's what should be there. That's what you should be talking about. Now, like you guys said earlier, if it's your personal accounts, then if you want to talk about, the outfit that you bought your cat, rock and roll, go for it. You know what I mean? Like go for it all the time. But too many times, the first time, a company reaches out to me, and, one of the first things I do is I basically do an audit. I go into their social media history, and I look at everything that they've posted in the past year. And you'll be surprised, or maybe you won't. 90% of the things that they're talking about have nothing to do in the field that they're an expert in or claim to be an expert in. So if you're into real estate and I'm looking at your Instagram, it's all about your cat, or it's about your kid in school, and you're happy about that, which that's amazing and God bless that, right? But if you're trying to show a specific audience why they should choose you, that's why when you signed up for the social media account, you selected business account, because you're trying to highlight
Hmm.
why you're an authority in this particular niche. And so I think that with what I like to do is really get in there and figure out what your goals are in terms of communication, and then figuring out the best way to communicate that without just somebody swiping up and passing your piece of content.
Fantastic. And so what I'm hearing from both of you here is, so number one, you have to be able to, know your audience, obviously, number one. Number two is then you develop that message for that particular audience. And then number three is, okay, how do you communicate most effectively that message to that audience? Does that sound about right, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and I think that
Absolutely.
we talk about this a lot. There are some people who are really good at providing historical context. Like you're one of those people. Like some of the people that you have on your show, do an
Hmm.
excellent job. Like I think about Antoine, right?
Right.
Like Antoine is a leader today, but he was also, exceptionally good at providing context, talking about where we've come from, right?
Right.
And that's a person who can do that. And there are also people who are now that can read an article and it's definitely clickbait, right? And I know you guys see these things in your respective fields where, you see some clickbait article, and you look at it and it's not the thing that you thought it was, but then you have people who can decipher that and really show people, that it's not what you think, and here's what's really going on. And so I think that we need both of those types of as Reggie said, thought leaders, in this space to kind of move aside some of the fluff that we look at every day.
Right. And so, really open question to both of you. What are some of your thoughts from looking at, okay, obviously social media is fairly young, right? And what is it, about 12 years old, 13 years old, somewhere
Yeah.
around there, somewhere in that range. So from what you've seen, specifically looking at, let's say, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, right? Am I missing any of the big, those are the big three, right? So specifically looking at those three, what would you say is the next thing coming, or the future of how it's used? Do you foresee just the next few years, probably it's going to be used in the same way? Or do you foresee it possibly being used in other ways for other purposes?
Oof.
Yeah, that's that's a good question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've already seen. So one thing that I've noticed is that during this pandemic period, it seems like the companies have been doing a lot of testing and figuring out how customers' needs and wants have changed. So immediately after, pandemic happened, quarantine started to go into effect, people were obviously spending more time on social media. And, the people that put these platforms together, they're really smart. They're smarter than all of us. They're the best at what they do, right? So they spend a lot of time and energy trying to perfect these platforms or to get them to be more effective at what they do. And so I feel like they spend a lot of time just kind of studying how customers' habits changed, and trying to tailor the platforms to do more of what people needed and what the data seemed to say that they wanted out of these platforms in the future. If we're going to go to a world that's more digitally based, where meetings like this are taking place online, they're trying to create the platform so that they can be a place where people are having these conversations, as opposed to some of the other platforms that are out there, or in place of, hey, let's all get together around a table and break bread and have a conversation about a topic. They're trying to make their respective places the platform that people want to choose to have these conversations or have these group meetings. And so I feel like from the beginning, they've always been about trying to build community. And, it's kind of artificial, but that need for community spaces is still there, and is there even more so now in this world that we live in, and that we're kind of looking at for the future. So I feel like, without knowing exactly what they're going to look like or how they're going to change, I do think that we're going to see them continue to try to innovate and change their platforms so they're a place where people want to have conversations or can go and have conversations, whether it's, doing some kind of town hall event where you can talk to a lot of people about a hot button issue, or, how can I create a private space where just me and my friends can have a conversation, or me and my small group, or whatever it might be. So I see them as trying to create different platforms within the platform, basically, to have different types of conversation. So.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, go ahead, Anton, please.
No, I was just going to say, I think that they are, and if you look at what's happening right now, if you look at any social media platform, what is the thing right now they're trying to push? And it's voting, right? Right now, they're trying to make everybody vote, whenever you click Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or one of these platforms, right above, you see a little thing register to vote, register to vote. And I think that, with the advent of AI, I think they're trying to get into the business of predicting what you want so that they can become that thing, if that makes sense. I think that
Absolutely.
it's starting right now with the ads. When you Google something and then you switch over to Facebook, all of a sudden here come the ads for that thing that you looked up, and then you have the kind of conspiracy theorists who say, I was just talking about something and I went to Facebook and now it's there, right? Because everybody has that person who says that happens, right? I haven't really
Yeah.
been able to prove or disprove that, but everybody's spoken to that person before.
Yeah.
And so I think that they're trying to figure out what the next trend is going to be, because they I don't think they're really, these new tech companies aren't really interested in sharing space. And it's crazy the way our laws are set up with antitrust and things like that. We don't like monopolies in this country, but a lot of the companies are going that way. If you
Mhm.
look at even taking something like Amazon, for example, Amazon's wiping out the Kohl's and the TJ Maxx's and the Marshalls, and the only people who are surviving are Target and Walmart, because everybody's trying to become everything for everybody. And they will use your data, and they will use all these other things, with things that you like, things that you search, to try to get to that point. So I see these companies kind of growing bigger and trying to be your one-stop shop for everything. And I guess the only time will tell whether we want that, or we're gonna have some pushback.
Yeah,
No,
I'm
that's a
sure you
great
guys
point. Go
remember.
ahead, Reggie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you guys remember the it's a hair care product called Just for Me, and
Hmm.
that's what I think about as you were talking. Like they're trying to make uh, the platforms, customizable and personalized, and I feel like
Mhm.
that's where everything is going. Like it is your personal whatever you want it to be. If you want to hear news and views from a particular political perspective, or about your sports team that you follow in your region,
Mhm.
like I feel like it's trying to create, you can create it to be whatever you want it to be. It has
It's like
all
your
of these
personal
tools and
echo
function.
chamber.
Right, exactly. And so, it's gonna filter content, so you get stuff that you've demonstrated that you like and you want more of. And so, um, if you want to mute certain friends or just not hear their opinions, well, you can make them go away. In real life, you can't do that, but on this platform, you can filter the content the way that you
Mhm.
want. So I feel like that is um, definitely part of the plan for all these platforms in the future, is to make it so that the user at least feels like they can make it whatever they want it to be, even though the real power is with the company. But at least as a user of the platform, I feel like I can personalize it to my taste.
And so that to me is the artificial intelligence, as was mentioned before, the algorithms, right? So
Mhm.
they gather over, I guess it's probably done in micro portions on a daily basis, on a hourly basis, weekly basis, and I guess they aggregate all this information, and then they figure out, okay, all right, well, Reggie likes this and Anton likes that, but
Mhm.
Reggie doesn't like this, but Anton likes that. And so then, right, so then when you log in, maybe there are ads or things of that nature. So what is it that they're actually doing that enables them to figure out what you like and what you don't like, and then to push that information your way?
They're
I mean,
just
they're just
absorbing your
tracking.
data.
Yeah, they're
Um,
tracking your activity.
Hmm.
okay.
What you look at, how long you look
Hmm.
at it, um, who you open messages from, uh, who you comment with and message to. So because they built it, I mean, they can track all that information, and they're just logging it, and they're using the algorithms and the AI to uh, give you more of that based on what they predict you'll want more of. So
Right. I just think that they are taking advantage of our, I don't know, like what would be a better word? Like they're taking advantage of our kind of tendency to become tribal. They don't, like a person who's capable of critical thinking wants to be proven wrong in some respect. Like
Hmm.
they want those other opinions to constantly come in, so that somebody could provide something that probably challenges, the status quo, because a person who's good at critical thinking always thinks that he could be wrong, right? but it takes that right argument. But if, like Reggie said, they're creating these echo chambers of just whatever you like, like, and nothing that dissents from the things that you like to absorb, then you're not really able to hear that dissenting argument, and so you're just kind of left, to your own devices, which is what they like. And
Hmm.
so I don't know whether that's good or bad. For me, it's not very good at all. But I think that's the way that social media is trending, because they want to make the experience unique for you.
Got it. And I guess, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but, I do question if it's on the borderline of, of ethics, because now they're making it more addictive. Whereas, again, in that, the documentary, The Social Dilemma, it's these coders and these engineers work on specific sounds when you get an email, right? Specific sounds when you get a text and notifications. And what does it make you do? Makes you always want to look down at your phone, because Anton, as you mentioned before, you get that dopamine hit, right? It's like, oh, what's this? Do I have something waiting for me? Right? Almost like they're little mini Christmas gifts every time you open up, your phone and you look at it. And so, and I wonder about that. But, in closing, what are your thoughts, both of you, bringing it back to business? What are some of the most effective strategies that you've seen businesses use recently in order to promote themselves using social media?
Trying to think of a company that uses it extremely well. I mean, I think that the best that I see, and maybe just because of my personal echo chamber, I use a lot of social media for sports, and I think they use it well, whereas back in the day, like if your favorite player was injured or this or that, like you didn't really know until game time. Whereas now, because of social media, you have insight to like every practice and interviews and interactions and things like that. So it's being used in a very positive way. And I think that companies can sort of regular companies outside of the sporting world can model model of like staying interactive with your consumers, but in a very positive way, because people like to know what's going on. We love to absorb information. And so, for example, in your line of work, if the interest rates are fluctuating or if laws are changing, a quick tweet about, hey guys, pay attention to the interest rates today. People who follow you might value that one little sentence, right? Versus you talking about, you picked up a few pineapples at the grocery store. The people who don't do this, use these platforms properly, that's what they're talking about, right? If there's new tech out that can help you design design your websites better, Reggie's clients want to know about that, and they look to him as that resource. So if he's talking about it, they respect that opinion. And so I think that the best way is to say a cliche saying, stay in your lane, and then once you establish who you want to communicate with, then at that point then you can grow once you create your base.
Oh, that's a great point. Harkening back to before. Go ahead, Reggie.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that people that I see that are being successful are they're aware of what's happening in the world around them, and so I feel like people don't expect companies to just be all about business without acknowledging things that are happening, socially, things that are happening economically. And the pandemic sort of brought that to light. And then, the racial unrest, social justice stuff that happened as well. People were not looking for companies to have something to say about that. Like, these are issues that are affecting everybody around the country, around the world, and so, you know, you have to have some sort of response. You know, and people were looking for that. And I think as things happen, big issues happen, because social media has done such a good job of connecting us all in that way. People are looking for, that's the new space where people are looking for your company to have some kind of response. And so people can't respond without thinking through ahead of time, okay, where do we stand on these issues? What are our values?
Right.
You know, the next time something happens, where's our company at, and what steps are we taking? You know, people are looking for companies that were like, hey, here's what we're doing to take care of our customers and our staff as we're all dealing with this virus situation, or we see what's happening in society, here, equality and things like that. So people are looking for that, and I think companies, you know, it's a line that they have to toe, but they've got to think about it ahead of time. They can't afford to not consider, you know, their customers and where they need to be when things like this happen. So it requires some forethought and putting it on paper, like, okay, here's who we are, and here's how we're responding to what's happening in the world. So there's a way to do that is thoughtful about the bottom line, because people are always thinking about that, as they should, in business. But people are looking for companies that are good citizens too. And so, you know, not just good companies that making money, but like actually care about what's happening in the real world. So the best companies on social media are able to do both. They're able to still say, hey, this is who we are. We got great products and services, but we also care. We care about what's happening to you, our customer, and here's how we're showing that we care. So.
Well, I think that's honestly the perfect way to end. You know, thank you so much for your insight, Reggie. Thank you so much for your insight, Anton. This is the Visionary Experience. We look forward to seeing everyone again. If you want to learn more about Enthuse Creative, please check out our show notes. If you want to learn more about Small Circle Social, please check out our show notes. See you again. Hey family, what an amazing conversation today. I look forward to seeing you again soon, and as always, to God be the glory.